Hey guys, Pastor Josh here. Hey, I want to talk for just a moment about the book that I have just finished reading for the class that I'm taking on spiritual formation, and it's strengthening the soul. Oh, whatever happened to that? Strengthening the soul of your leadership by Ruth Barton. Incredible, phenomenal book. Very encouraged as I dug into this and just consumed the content that was there. This is a book that I wish I would have ran across. Really, just the whole idea of spiritual formation probably 20 years ago, early on in my faith journey. I've always been devoted to the Lord with my devotional times, but I haven't really thought of it as a place to where I go and rest. Early on in my walk, it kind of started off as a place of striving because I wanted to be good at ministry. So therefore, I knew I had to pray and read my Bible and spend time with the Lord. And so it ended up kind of being a work in and of itself. And I didn't really develop these healthy rhythms of spiritual formation. And so I thought she did an incredible job of breaking down some of the things that I've been practicing on as I've kind of learned this journey, really more so over the last, say, 15 years. Specifically the last 10 years, I feel like that I've really kind of found the sweet spot of really just being able to really strengthen my soul and take care of the inner me and being able to develop that place in the Lord. So one of the things that she brings out in this book is the story of Moses. And I thought it was beautifully well written how she went through the life of Moses and just illustrated this as a pastor. This really speaks to me as she just went through his life and talked about all those things, especially where she gets into how the call of Moses on his life and how the Lord encountered him there in solitude, in a place of obscurity, and not because he was gifted or surrounded by people that were really championing this call, but because he was isolated and actually you could even suggest running from the call of God, and God found him in the burning bush. This has always been a very meaningful story to me and something I've been able to reflect on in my own life. And so that was something that was deeply impactful. There were a couple of things that she talked about that I wanted to highlight. One is she talks about Christopher Reeves and how, when I was a kid in the 80s, Christopher Reeves was Superman. And then he had this accident where I believe he fell off a horse and he was a quadriplegic for the rest of his life. And she talks about how the impact that he made and through advocacy and different things in real life, he really became his Superman and a real superhero to people. And those things wouldn't have happened. He might have, fallen on the same path that many celebrities have fallen upon, and just how it really made him a better person. And I was deeply moved by that story. Another thing that she talked about is she shares a story about being on a beach, like a personal retreat, and she encountered a guy comes running up to her on the beach and says, "Hey, you need to get out of the water." And so she got out, she worked her way out of the water. And when she looked back, she could see a shadow under the water. And she asked the guy if it was a shark. And he said, "No, it's actually a saltwater crocodile," and which I didn't even know existed. But she begins to talk about how dangerous those things are that are beneath the surface. And for me, it really impacted me and caused me to ask the question, are there things beneath the surface that I don't see that I need other people in my life to speak to? And I was very encouraged by that point, just to enter into a lot of self-examination, and how a lot of times we look at, I know I look at a lot of times my spiritual practices, or the rhythms that I have in my life, spiritual formation. A lot of times I don't spend a lot of time examining self. A lot of my time is just spending time with the Lord. Some of the things that she really brings up, the importance of rest and Sabbath is critical. I know in my life I had to learn to do that. And that's why I wish I would have read this book, 20 years ago. Just being able to find the place of rhythms and rest. And I remember when I was young in the ministry and my zeal, I kind of thought people that practiced Sabbath were weak, or they were unspiritual. And what I found is in my youthful zeal, so much of the ministry that I did, and that's one of the things I love about this, is it's really specific to me. It seems specifically designed for people in the ministry and people that are really doing a lot of work for the Lord. But for me, in my youthful zeal, I overlooked the rhythms of rest. And in fact, I kind of looked at them as a little bit of a stumbling block, if I'm being honest. Like, I looked at those as things that, hindered me from ministry. But when I learned that, I really found that really ministry must come from this place of grace and wholeness and health. And so that's been the journey that I've been on, that she really affirmed a lot of those things in that I was already doing, but also just encouraged me to go a little bit deeper, especially with Sabbath and rhythms and taking breaks and all those kinds of things. And many times we can just look at it as unproductive, and it's challenging to look at. The only thing that in the book that I wish that she would have hit on a little bit more and emphasized a little bit more was the end of Moses's life, where Moses is, he, from my understanding, from my theological standpoint, I look at that and say, man, Moses blew it at the end of his ministry whenever he struck the rock. And this should have been, he should have, instead of trusting God in that moment, he was acting out in the flesh, and he was responding to this moment out of frustration and force. And I think so many times we kind of look at Moses and say he did everything right, but he didn't finish well. And so from a theological standpoint, I would like to have seen her talk a little bit more about that, but she did emphasize a lot that he was still in the good grace of God, which was deeply encouraging. That even though he blew it in that leadership moment, his whole ministry wasn't defined by that poor moment. And so agree with that, love that part. But I do think it is important for leaders and for people looking at this going, hey, we've got to finish well, we've got to finish strong. But I love the story of Moses. I love how she weaved that into our spiritual health and our soul as we go out in ministry. So it's an encouraging book, highly recommend it, and thanks so much for your time.